Good afternoon. It is Tuesday, June 2nd, 2020 at 5 o'clock p.m. I'd like to call to order the Town of Sutton Select Board. This is a remote Zoom meeting, and I'll read the Zoom declaration. This open meeting of the Town of Sutton Select Board is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. The governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. The order allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation. Unless such participation is required by law, this meeting will feature public comment. For this meeting, the Select Board is convening via the Zoom app as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. Please note that this meeting is being recorded, so be careful about what you share because anything that you share can become public. Thank you. At this time, we do have public forum. If there's anybody here for public forum. Sounds like we have nobody. So we'll move on to our minutes.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I'd like to accept the minutes from our meeting from 5/19/2020 as presented.
Second.
Meeting in a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Passes 5-0. Our first agenda item is an approval of the town meeting warrant. Jim?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The board may recall last meeting we did a draft warrant, presented that to the board. I would prefer to just run through it real quickly. I just want to let the public know that, these are just the essential items to keep the town operating with a budget and a reduced capital plan. So there is no controversial items on this warrant other than you have an issue with the budget or some of the capital items. Most of the capital items are public safety related. But there is the sewer project, the purchasing the land on Waters Road for parking at Waters Farm Days, changing the title from Board of Selectmen to Select Board. All of these have been postponed until we can meet at a later date in a safer environment. So, not discouraging attendance at town meeting, but obviously my hope is that we get through it relatively easily without a whole lot of controversy, which, if you look at our past, that's typically how we operate. So we'll see if that happens this year or not. But article, do you mind if I run through the articles real quickly just to kind of let you know, or?
Yeah, go right ahead. That's great.
Okay, thank you. Article number 1 is to receive the reports from town offices and committees. This is an article that's put on every year. Very rarely do we have reports. Once in a while we had the reports when the Charter Bylaw Review Committee was going in the 2012 to 2014. So that was a report that we got. But very rarely do we get any actual reports. Article number 2 is to authorize the cemetery commissioners to employ themselves. We've got 2 great cemetery commissioners in Jim Renard and Jim Johnson. This is a requirement on a Mass General Law, Chapter 268A, conflict of interest law, and essentially requires the legislative body, which is in our case town meeting, to authorize them to do this. So that's why we have this article on a yearly basis. And Jim Renard and Jim Johnson can assist with burials at various times. Article number 3 is the same for the Board of Health. This authorizes the Board of Health to employ themselves. I don't believe we've had that happen. We do have some licensed septic engineers on the Board of Health, but I don't believe we've paid any of them in the recent past. But it is a placeholder. It is there just in case we need it. Article number 4 is to fund the sewer department. It's the enterprise fund. This funds the sewer department. No significant changes in this budget. It just cost of living changes, and that's essentially it. Article 5 is to fund the transfer station enterprise fund. The only significant change in this item is that the Board of Selectmen indicated they would be supportive of a $10 increase in the sticker charge for transfer station stickers. So the sticker charge is now $50. Those will go on sale to the public online on the at suttonma.org. June 8th, next Monday, they will go online. If you don't have a computer, if you don't have access to it, then you can do it. You can submit all your information via the Dropbox in front of Town Hall. We will get that on a daily basis. We will see your license, registration, all that information, and a check for $50, and we will mail out a permit to you. So the easiest way is to go online and purchase a sticker, but the alternative is if you are not, don't have access to the internet. So Article number 6 is the budget. This is the annual budget. This year, it's tricky. You know, as I think you folks have seen the budget message, which I included in my update, this is a very unusual year. You know, our second largest funding source, which is state aid, is unknown at this point in time. So we are going forward. The state has yet to, the legislature has yet to meet and agree upon a budget number. We have planned for some contingencies by creating a reserve fund, which totals almost $170,000. We've level funded state aid. We haven't included the governor's number, which in my opinion is those numbers are dead on arrival at this point. So we'll have to wait and see. Hopefully the state comes out with a number. They may be waiting on the federal government to see if they're going to give any assistance to states. But we have to get this budget approved, and we will obviously have the option of revising the budget at fall town meeting whenever we decide to meet. So it's something in motion, but we do have the ability to withstand a short-term issue, as the board is well aware. We have a lot of one-time revenues, and we've got some extra new growth. So we can appropriate one or both of them depending upon the scenario. You know, Tim and I have been working on this and just remain flexible at this point in time, and we'll keep you up to date. Article number 7 is the revised capital plan. It was originally funded for almost over $1 million. It is now funded at, without the enterprise funds, which is from the sewer department, it's $540,000. So we are replacing a roof and some windows down at the highway department. You know, it's just, it needs to be done. And police and fire and a few other small items. So this is a revised, pared down capital plan. I've got a number of items that we've deferred of roughly $550,000 that are not part of this. And we're trying to preserve our free cash for the situation we're in. So we'll have to wait and see whether if we get some additional funds and then we can appropriate the free cash the way we originally intended to. But right now keeping our powder dry, so to speak, and being prepared for what may come. Article number, so that was the capital plan, was article number 7. Article number 8 is to pay bad bills. These are invoices that come in after the end of the fiscal year. And we did get 2 of them for Medicare, Medicaid billing from the school department. They were sort of lost in transit between the school and the town. We found them, and it's roughly in the amount of $1,132. So the only way we can pay that is if town meeting approves paying those bills, and I believe that's a 4/5 vote. But those are funds that we owe, and generally we make a significant amount of money off of the Medicaid billing. That the process that we have. Article number 9 is to be able to borrow money in anticipation of Chapter 90 funds. This again is a placeholder. We haven't had to use this item. We haven't had to borrow in anticipation of Chapter 90. A lot of that is due to the hard work of Highway Department, Matt Stencil and Tim Harrison. But it's there in case we need it. But again, we haven't needed it in the recent past. Article number 10 is to, for the first time, transfer money out of compensated absences to the police lieutenant's salary account. This is for sick time and vacation time buyback. Lieutenant Perry is planning on retiring in July and August or August timeframe. He's served the town wonderfully, and he is owed his sick time, essentially. There's a lot of this is sick time. And, the Board of Selectmen back in 2006 capped the sick time buyback and froze it essentially at the 2006 levels. But, Dave has been, is owed this money as a result of being here since 2006 and, on the side doing a terrific job for the town of Sutton. So he will certainly be missed. Article number 11 is to transfer from free cash to the general stabilization fund the amount of $100,000. The goal of this is to create an additional recurring revenue source for the town of Sutton recurring revenue budget. So right now our funding level is it's over the 8% of operating budget minus debt exclusion debt. This 100,000 will make it clear that we are certainly over that amount. Our goal is not to deplete the stabilization fund. Our goal is to allow it to grow at a lower rate or lesser rate than it would without withdrawing some funds from it. I think this is an opportunity to create an additional recurring revenue during this difficult time. And right now we have close to $2.5 million in that account. That's just, sitting there in case of a rainy day. And this is a way to make it produce something versus just letting it grow. So article number 12 is to transfer $696,600 from the capital stabilization fund to long-term debt. This is for the paving of Central Turnpike. This is for purchasing a highway truck and a piece of fire apparatus, replacing engine 3, I think, down in Wilkinsonville. So this is the town meeting authorized this borrowing last year, annual town meeting, and this is just following through with the mechanics of this process. And article number 13 is to transfer funds to take care of underfunded accounts. This is a normal article that we generally have. Right now, we not anticipating any unfunded items Any unfunded issues will be covered by year-end transfers, which is generally a Board of Selectmen vote along with the Finance Committee concurring. So that process will take place in late June, early July, and that'll wrap up. But that's it. That's the warrant. You can see there's nothing controversial necessarily other than the normal operating process that the town has.
Great. Thank you, Jim. Jesse.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jim, thank you for the update. And again, just reminding the folks in town that, again, our goal is to essentially focus on the needs of town operational sense with this town meeting. And again, we're going to avoid all of the fun, controversial stuff for the fall at a time that will be more appropriate. The only comment that I have is I just want to reiterate something that we discussed last meeting in terms of Article 11, is that we are not, in fact, actually drawing out of principal that's in the stabilization fund, but rather we're drawing off the interest.
That's correct.
Yeah, because again, we're using that, as you said, because we've reached that level where it's sustainable. So I just don't want anyone to get the false conception that we're drawing down our accounts. That's not the case here.
That's correct.
And other than that, I think it's great. I'm looking forward to seeing how this is going to work. And we'll deal with this in a couple of weeks. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just appreciate Jim running through those articles individually. They're what we saw at our last meeting, so I'm very comfortable with signing off on them. So thank you very much, Jim, for that.
Thank you.
Jonathan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Jim. Yeah, there's nothing more I have to add. This is what we saw last time, and I'm comfortable with it, and it'll be interesting to see how it goes.
Thank you. Jeff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have really no questions or comments on it other than thank you, Jim, for the explanation. It was very clear on all of them, so no surprises, and I'm good to go.
Great. I think I'm in the same place. We've been through this before. As Wendy just said, I think it's appreciate that you ran through them for the public. And Jesse also picked up on comment about the pared down agenda to begin with. So I think we're good. So with that, I think, Jeff, we have a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve and sign the June 22nd, 2020 town meeting warrant.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Dave Hall, aye.
Wendy Mead, aye.
Jesse Lemanik, aye.
Jonathan Anderson, aye.
Jeff Bannon, aye.
Passes 5-0. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, that'll be in the foyer tomorrow for, if you have time to stop in and sign it, each member.
Okay, everybody got that?
Yep.
Great. Next up is a request to increase the capital stabilization fund by 2.5%. Jim?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is an article that we have before you every year. Obviously, with town meeting delayed, we've delayed this item to this point in time. This would allow the town to increase the override FY20 override figure from $638,822 to $654,793. It's a 2.5% increase. As you know, the goal of this was, as we paid down the Shaw Farm borrowing, we have more money for capital projects. When we started out, we had a few dollars for capital projects. Now we have a lot more available for capital projects. So we have been utilizing this fund now. We have, as we just talked about, utilized it to pave Central Turnpike. And we may do some additional work on Central Turnpike as well. We're looking at some of the areas that still need some attention up at Whittier Farms near Town Farm Road, up at the top of down to the Oxford line. So we're still looking at that, and we have some extra funds from that borrowing and a fire apparatus and a highway truck. We are also looking at this for sewer project from the villas to the school department. So when we discuss this at a future town meeting, what you'll see is probably a capital stabilization fund to fund the sewer project versus a debt exclusion override. Appreciate some of the feedback I've gotten from some people saying that they didn't feel the time was right for a debt exclusion borrowing, an additional burden on the taxpayers. And we took that seriously, and Tim and I went back to the drawing board and figured out we can use the capital stabilization fund to fund that project, which will free up $130,000 in operating revenue, which would be helpful at this time of year going into the uncertainty. But for a later date, but it is the value of this fund that was created 13 plus years ago by Tim Harrison and Kevin Garrity. So I'm asking the board's authorization to increase this fund by 2.5% tonight.
Excellent. Thank you, Jim. Jesse?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jim, Tim, this is an excellent tool that we have in our toolbox, so to speak. And again, having the foresight back when Shaw Farm was to purchase to create this mechanism that allows us to essentially use funds to purchase not extravagant items, but items that we would go to the town anyways to purchase. But we do so in a way that is not contentious, that's not controversial. Again, it doesn't take much time to pick up newspapers, and if anyone does that anymore, and see instances in towns where town meetings get raucous over arguments of purchasing things that like fire trucks and police cars. But fortunately, thanks again to the foresight of the board and Tim at the time to put this forward and town meeting for approving this, we've eliminated that. And while town meetings aren't as fun as they used to be before we put this forward, again, it's a wonderful tool. And Jim, I think nothing says it more than your point about utilizing the capital stabilization fund for the potential sewerage project. Because to your point, and I think you were spot on, if we would have put this before the voters, particularly in light of the economic downturn that we're going to experience, there's no way it was going to pass. But at least this way, the funds are available, people's property taxes are not going to go up. And again, I think it's proper use. And again, I think that's what it was designed for. So I think we're blessed to have it at our disposal. And again, how can I not support what essentially is a small increase to ensure long-term that these necessary projects are going to be funded in the least burdensome way to the taxpayers as possible.
Yeah.
So that's all I have. I'm fully in support, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you. Wendy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to thank off the top of my head Kevin Garrity and Tim for their forethought in establishing this fund. I think now, to Jesse's point, with the economic issues that we're all going to have going forward, I think this is the most conservative approach that we can take for necessary items in the town. So thank you, Tim, and to Kevin somewhere out there. We appreciate it very much, and I support it wholly.
Great.
Thank you, Mr.
Wendy.
Chairman.
Jonathan?
Mr. Chairman. No, I agree with both Jesse and Wendy. I think this is a great tool that was put together for us to have the flexibility to be able to deal with, capital items that come up. It also allows us to deal with situations where we have to maybe wait 6 months for town meeting. So I think this is just a great tool for us to manage the town. I mean, there's a lot of constraints, budget for a small town. And this is just another tool for us to be able to manage within those constraints without really impacting the taxpayers.
Great. Thank you, Jonathan. Jeff?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm fully in support of this. I think the capital stabilization fund plan has proven its worth over the years, and to the point where, and we'll talk about it in future meetings. Obviously, we're at a point where we can potentially do a project the size of the sewer project that we're contemplating without an increase in property taxes says a lot about it. And it just kind of affords us the ability to discuss the merits of that project without having to worry about potential tax increases to go along with it. So fully supportive in support of this in continuing the plan as is. So.
Great, thank you, Jeff. Hey, Jim, just on the technical side, we do this every year, and the 2.5% is related to the tax levy increase, the maximum tax levy increase allowed by Prop 2.5.
That's correct.
So the 2.5% is not some arbitrary thing. It's basically given to us by essentially the 2.5, the Prop 2.5 law.
State government, that's correct.
So for those in the public wondering if that number means anything, that's where it comes from. And, you know, I think the board so far has said everything there is to be said. I think, as Jesse said, the 2.5% is really a modest amount to continue to grow this fund in a way that does all of the great things that have been talked about. And so I also am fully in support of this item. So with that, I think, Jonathan, there's a motion.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to authorize the assessor's office to increase the capital stabilization fund by an additional 2.5% increase to the FY20 override figure of $638,822 to $654,793.
I'll second that.
That's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye, David Hall.
Sorry, I'm muted. Aye, Wendy Mead.
Jess Lemanik, aye.
Jonathan Anderson, aye.
Jeff Bannon, aye.
Passes unanimously, 5-0. Thank you very much. Next up is a town hall reopening plan. Jim?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I present this to you to let you know what our plan is. This is in keeping with the Baker Polito's Reopening Massachusetts program report. You know, to be frank, most of us have been here from the start. You know, somewhat reduced hours, but ever since the town hall closed in March, police, fire, highway have been operating. The Board of Health, they've been going full staff plus some. But Deb has been here, I've been here, Tim has been here Tuesdays and Fridays, and you know, operations have continued. Erin Shinapi, payroll, she's processed that terrifically for both the town and the school department. Really no major issues. We did open enrollment in April and early May, even with town hall officially closed. So this is just a formal report, but in reality, it's, you know, we're here and we've been here since March. So, but you know, we are formally opening to the public next Monday by appointment only. If somebody needs to come in and meet with a department head, and there's really no other alternative, they can't do it by email or by phone or Zoom or any other process, then they have the ability to come into town hall. It's the responsibility of the department head to contact the Board of Health, arranging the appointment. Let's say it's at 10 o'clock. The individual comes into town hall. The Board of Health takes their temperature and records that information down for potential tracing issues. And then the employee is able to meet with that individual. We're discussing potential spaces. We've got the conference room upstairs on the 3rd floor that we can wipe it down and clear it out and just have the individual present whatever plans or however they would like to do it. The town clerk's office, they've wiped off, cleared the top of a file cabinet. As you first go in, there used to be a calendar there. You guys might recall that. but that's cleared now, and that can be wiped down and sanitized before and after a meeting. The building department, where we'll probably see a number of people come in, John Kuchar has decided to meet individuals outside of town hall. So we won't have to deal with having them take their temperature and so forth, but he will have a mask. He will request the individual that's presenting have a mask, and he will meet outside on the stairs of town hall and discuss whatever they need to do, whether it's a plan, whether it's an idea, or what have you. So, we're being flexible. We're trying to be able to work with the public. I believe things have been going fairly smoothly with the public ever since we closed when it was March 16th, give or take. Things have been going relatively smoothly, and we have had little pushback. So I'm glad about that. We are pushing the online presence. We are selling transfer station stickers online, and we will get them. We will get the money online, and we will send out a sticker to the individual. So we are thinking outside the box a little bit. We are becoming more sophisticated online customers. But it is a way to deal with the situation as it presents itself. So the policy is before you. If you have any questions, or you can bring them up and mention them to me, or it's still a policy in motion. We have ordered some plexiglass for the assessors window area. That will essentially allow for an area of someone slip information in and receive information from the other side, but it will protect people. The library has the plexiglass already in place. The Treasurer Collector's Office obviously has glass in place as well. So John Kuchar has installed plastic chains across doorways to prevent someone from coming in basically getting within the 6-foot social distance area. He's put that up in most offices. So, some point we just gotta bite the bullet, but we're taking it slowly and just safely at this point in time, because I obviously value the department heads and town employees here at Town Hall and all other municipal facilities.
Very good. Thank you, Jim. Jesse.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Jim, for this update. The one question that I do have is, will there be a posting of the department head numbers at the door? Because I know there are still people that are asking me what's going on with Town Hall, because for whatever reason, they're not paying attention to our Zoom meetings or social media or whatever. So at least that way, in the event that somebody, particularly a senior citizen, who comes to Town Hall expecting it to be business as usual, will have the means to put a call into the department they're looking for.
Yeah, sure. That's a great idea. And we will post that on the front door. With that, I'll probably include it as part of a press release that, I don't know whether she's on the call or not, but the Millbury Sutton Chronicle generally prints a lot of what we talk about in these meetings. So Sandy Bowles, maybe we'll get that information, and she'll be able to publish essentially the list of department head numbers.
Yeah, again, those of us who are technically savvy, obviously it's not an issue. But again, I'm sure there are people who could become frustrated if they expected to just show up and walk in. And I know during the normal course of day, Town Hall is not exactly, I don't know, like a thriving circus, but there are still people that come expecting to do normal business. Now, I know a lot of people come to your office because you're the most popular man in town. So, but it's just, again, I know we're everything's fluid. I know everything's changing, but anything we can do to bend over backwards to help make sense of what we're doing, I just think it's the most effective in the long run.
Yeah.
The other question I have is, are you at the point now where you're contemplating the next step? Obviously, if the plexiglass shields are going to be in place, there's going to be chains to the point when Town Hall stores will be open. Have you given any thought?
I try to take it one step at a time in this situation. I really don't know what the future holds for us, but I just don't want to open the doors and make it a free for all. I just would like to, go slowly if I have that option. But
Nothing wrong with baby steps, but again,
Yeah.
just to have it in your back, your mind, if there's some type of indicator that you're looking for that may trigger your desire to go, I guess what we would consider to be a phase 3 opening of
Yeah.
town hall.
Right now it's not required that we open town hall. The state government doesn't require town halls to be open. I was on a conference call this morning with the Lieutenant Governor and Mass Municipal Association, and there is no requirement, but I felt like this was a way to slowly ease into the option of giving people the opportunity to come into town hall if they needed to, following some certain basic, restrictions.
Yep.
But some town halls are not opening. They're just staying closed, and many of the people are working from home. That's not the way we've decided to move forward. But I will continue to communicate and attend the weekly meetings with Karen Polito and Jeff Beckworth and Mass Municipal Association, and talk to other managers that are dealing with the same situation. And I'll keep you folks informed.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Jesse. Wendy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think it's a great idea to post the numbers of the department heads. But just to clarify, Jim, they can't call from the front steps of City Hall and Town Hall and get an appointment. They have to make
Yeah.
that appointment ahead of time, correct?
Yeah, just because of obvious reasons, the Board of Health isn't necessarily right there at their desks and able to take temperatures. And,
Right.
Obviously if the department head's there and they may not be here, they could potentially go outside, but it's just a challenge. So yeah, you can take down the number and give a call and make an appointment for a later time in the day or another day.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for that clarification. And I'm just sort of excited in a little way to see things moving back to some semblance of what we used to know. So thank you very much for your efforts.
Thank
That's
you,
all,
Wendy.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Jonathan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Jim, for outlaying this. I think it's really, like, I'm with Wendy on this. It's good to see us kind of making some progress forward and opening up the town hall, even though we don't necessarily need to. But I think it's a good gesture, and I think it just allows us for more access to people if they need it. But we also have the safety measures in place to protect both, the people coming to the town hall and the town hall workers as well. So, I'm happy to see we're moving forward, and I look forward to the day that, like Jesse brought up, where we're going into a phase 3 where people can come, obviously with still safety measures, but it's just good to see that we're making progress and we're moving forward.
Thank you, Jonathan. Jeff?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Jim. I guess the one question I had, Jim, was, have there been any concerns from employees that had some hesitancy to return to work? Maybe they have existing health issues that they don't want to, that they're concerned about being exposed to other people. And it may become a bigger issue in September when the schools go back, just because of the number of employees, but.
Yeah, you're right about the schools. I'm glad I'm a town manager, not a superintendent at this point in time. But usually everything I've done here at Town Hall, I generally generate it from the bottom up and involve the employees in the decision-making process. So the department heads all have this policy. It was disseminated to them last week, and I've got their support. I've spoken to individuals that may have an issue, either themselves immunocompromised or maybe a loved one that has a health issue, and everybody feels comfortable at this point in time. We have a certain staggered schedule. There are some people that are not essentially, we don't need them here in Town Hall, but they still do their job and then some. So we are kind of following the 25% occupancy, which is a general guideline of the state. But, Donna Wood works, half the day down at the treasurer's office, and we have 3 people in that office at one point in time. And, they 1 or 2 of them have masks inside the office, even though that's not a requirement, but just as an additional safety structure. And Matt Belcito has been very helpful in acquiring a number of masks and PPE for the employees. So every employee has 2 K95 masks for their access that they can wear. So, all the precautions are in place, and we'll see how it goes. Sorry.
Good. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Jim. When I first saw your plan, I was reading it with interest, because here in my workplace, we're really going through the same thing, and dealing with similar kinds of issues that you are as you put your plan together. So I was commiserating a little bit, maybe. And to Jeff's point, I think here, what we dealt with, one of the more difficult things was ensuring employees feeling comfortable. I think that was the first sort of test you had to pass, was to get the employees in a place where they felt like you've taken the right precautions to keep them safe and keep them comfortable. At the same time, I think it's interesting to note that really all the business of Town Hall has been ongoing anyway. So I think that our efforts to operate in a digital manner as best we can are really helpful, so that, for the most part, I think people are able to do whatever business they need to be able to do, despite whatever restrictions are in place, either prior to now or now that you're open. So certainly, I think, whatever the future looks like, at a point in time, to be able to come back to kind of normal operations, I think we've done good things to be able to serve the public in an electronic manner that would help people not have to come to Town Hall in the future if they don't want to. They can do it from work. They can do it from home. So those are good things, So I really don't have much to add. I think the plan looks fine to me. I think the public should be well served, and we ought to be able to just make it work. So that's all I really have. No vote here, so we can, unless there's any other comment, we can move on to the town manager's update. Jim?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first item is a reminder of the Finance and Warrant Committee meeting. We are currently on schedule for next Tuesday, the 9th at 6 p.m. We have agreed to condense the schedule to have Dr. Fitzpatrick lead off, representing Blackstone Valley Vocational Technical School, then the police department, fire department, highway department, and then the school department. Those are essentially the higher level budgets, and where we generally get the most questions. I kept the option open to the finance committee, and they preferred the reduced schedule for hopefully a reduced town meeting. So that's that. Final budget message. This was a struggle because it's tough to write a budget message for some unknown number and you really don't know what you're dealing with. But I tried to encapsulate it and just to let you know that we are dealing with an unknown situation and trying to provide the maximum flexibility to that unknown situation. So we have, again, we have money available in new growth and free cash. And, I'm not even thinking about stabilization where we have $2.5 million, but we are dealing with an unknown situation. So hopefully the state legislature gets working on this and gets some idea to us. It's sort of been quiet right now. And I'm sure they're waiting on the federal government to see if they're going to be a CARES Act 2.0, to see if they're going to give some bailout money to states and municipalities. So we'll wait and see on that. Again, we can always revise it at fall town meeting, which we do every year when we get the state aid, which generally comes in after town meeting happens in May. The CARES Act money, this is for COVID-19 expenses. This was part of the CARES Act 1, the $3 trillion package that was passed. Was it 3 or 2? I don't know, the numbers kind of go together at this point. 3 or 2 trillion, it's, you know, it's eventually some real money, but the town of Sutton was awarded $842,000. Every municipality in the country was awarded some sum of money. And these are expenses related to COVID-19. So these funds can be utilized in FY20 or FY21 and or FY21. We have some expenses that we've identified that we would like to get reimbursed right now. And the FY21 money, we're trying to wait on that because there's a lot of moving pieces. Some of it depends on whether we get a CARES Act number 2. Some of it depends on whether we can eventually use this money for an operating deficit, assuming the state is going to cut our local receipts, then we could use this as a plug measure on that. That has been a discussion that has gone on in Zoom conferences with the Lieutenant Governor and, Mass Municipal Association and a federal liaison that has been in on those calls. So, right now we just don't know, and we are waiting further guidance on that. So I had a meeting with this school department, with Tim and our finance team, and we've decided to have spend $100,000 out of the $850,000 roughly, and we've got a list together. The application is due this Friday. We've got a meeting, we've got a conference call Friday morning with the MEMA person, because some of these funds are reimbursable at FEMA level of 75%. So Federal CARES Act takes care of 25% and FEMA takes care of the additional 75%. So the Chromebooks that we're looking to purchase for the school department, all of that's 100% reimbursable. We will get all that money up front. Laptops, et cetera, that's all 100%. But some of the other items, PPE and the disinfecting machines that we're trying to get for the buildings that we serve, those are 25% reimbursable through the CARES and 75% through FEMA. And Paul Maynard's been working with us on our MEMA contact, and that person will be our connection to FEMA. So if you can follow the bouncing ball, there are a number of things to keep track of, but right now we are keeping our powder dry on 740,000 of this funds for 21. We have some ideas on what we could use that money for if we don't have a revenue issue and we can't use it for revenue, then we've got some plans for it. But right now we're waiting on future guidance from the state and federal government. So that is that. And essentially that's it. Transfer station stickers are online. I encourage everybody to go online, purchase a sticker. I've already done that. You can download the form and fill it out and mail it in. I happened to walk down the hallway and give it to Laura at the time, but most people can just mail it in or put it in the Dropbox, and we will send out a transfer station sticker within a few days of receipt. That's that's essentially it. The town election, we are encouraging people to vote by absentee ballot. You can request to do that through the town clerk's office. It must be received by before the election day, by the end of the election day. But by voting early, you can do that. It needs to be done by June 11th, I think. Vote early. Yeah, so we are planning, we're encouraging everybody to request a ballot, whether it's early voting or absentee voting, and hopefully hold back some of the big rush to vote on election day from 12 to 4 for the candidates running for re-election. That's all I have for updates, Mr. Chairman.
Very good. Thanks, Jim. Jesse.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jim, thank you for the update. Obviously, there's lots of components that are still in flux. So, you know, we'll just have to bide our time and wait and see how things play out ultimately.
Yeah.
And I know at the end of the day, even if it takes till fall town meeting, we'll make sure that everything is order. So patience, I guess, is the key at this point. In regards to the FinCom meeting, could I put in a request that we get a reminder to that email to us? I don't know if Debbie's listening to us.
Yeah, she's on the call.
Yeah, okay. If she could just send out a reminder. Probably not going to want to zoom in, but at least tune in. So at least that way we can see how things are going.
Sure.
I too purchased my sticker.
Hey.
I made a visit yesterday. I just wanted to see how everyone was doing in town hall. And I also had to drop off my son's absentee ballot. So again, make sure that the first votes are counted. So yeah, so I got that in order. And yeah, election day, it's going to be exciting. But where my son pulled the absentee ballot, I plan on voting in person. So we'll fight off the crowd in the gym from 12 to 4. 12
Good
to
luck
4,
with
right?
that.
Yeah, I know, right? I don't know if I'll be able to find a parking space. School closed during that time or what? I don't know.
Yeah.
But all right, very good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Jim.
Sure.
You're welcome. Wendy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have one question for Jim, but I just wanted to point out that neither Jim nor Jesse were able to figure out the computer to buy their stickers for the transfer station. I find that. My question for you, Jim, is the money that we received under the CARES Act,
Yeah.
what is that based upon? Is it based upon town population, town income? I mean, what is the formula that they use for that?
I think it's a simple population number. When I look at what some of the other communities in Massachusetts received, you know, Millville, for instance, is a lesser population than Sutton, and they got less money. Millbury obviously is bigger, and they got more money. I don't know that it's a complicated state formula, which we typically get through, you know, to state aid and so forth. I think it was
Right.
just based on population.
Okay, fantastic. That's really my only question. I appreciate the update very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Wendy. Jonathan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you, Jim, for the update. I think as far as the budget message goes, this just goes to highlight the you know, how conservative the town has been. That's prepared us for this time that, you know, we knew would come at some point, but just not so rapidly. I think that's just been the surprise. But the fact that we've been so conservative with our budget and kind of, you know, putting money away and making sure that, you know, when this day does come, that we can sustain at least a short-term period. So I think that just makes me feel good that, you know, that we're prepared. As far as the CARES Act goes, just one question around the Chromebooks. I know some of the challenges with the schools, in particular, with kids taking classes from home. Are some of those Chromebooks are allocated for families who, you know, maybe have to have multiple laptops because they have multiple kids at home and they don't necessarily have, some of that are allocated, I guess, for families.
Yeah, yeah. I believe the school department has worked hard to get every individual, every child a device, a Chromebook. When this whole closure started in middle of March, they handed out to some 40 odd Chromebooks to families. They communicated through their communication system with the parents, and they said that Chromebooks are available for pickup, and they handed them out. In between there, I hear that the elementary school principal has been handing out Chromebooks, going to individuals' homes if there's an issue, and delivering a Chromebook. So, these are some additional Chromebooks to have in inventory for potential issues. Like, as you mentioned, the family where the devices are all taken up. The bigger picture is, we have to come up with a plan if the students can't come back in the fall. Right now it looks like we're, or I don't want to speak out of turn, but I think that this state DESE chair is working with superintendents to figure out how we can safely have all the students back. There's been a proposal of, 1 week, half the students attend, and the second week it'll be remote learning, throughout the fall, and maybe up to when we get a vaccine and it's no longer a threat to any of us. It's still a process in motion, but we do have a plan of purchasing a number of Chromebooks, for one per student if necessary. We've got a quote of over $300,000 if everybody's to get a Chromebook for the 1,450 odd students that the system has. So, we are working on it. We do have the number. We do have the money within the CARES Act if needed in 2021, but we'll wait and see on that.
Yeah, that's good. I just think that we need to be prepared if we do need to, like, let's say kids go back to school, but then we need to close things down again. We need to be prepared and have a much more robust, I know this was kind of out of the blue, but now that we have some learnings from this, we need to have a much more robust kind of learning plan for kids, so that they're not falling, further behind. And so I know this is out of the purview of the selectmen, but it's just a concern that I have as a parent in town, and I'm sure other parents are concerned about the same thing. So just kind of putting that voice out there from my point of view.
Yeah.
So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. Jeff?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Jim. Couple things. With regard to the CARES Act, I'm glad that we're just we're kind of treating it very conservatively and holding off on the additional $700,000+ for next year. I guess my question on that is, if we get to August, September, October, and we've in the school department, because of this situation on the ground, so to speak, requires a lot more of a technology cash input, would we be able to access that money then, or are we going to have to wait?
Yeah, we can access it at any point in 2021. We are applying Friday, June 5th, but we're not required to apply June 5th. We can still apply by the end of this fiscal year and receive what we request. But, you can start to apply June 5th for any revenue deficits or any other problems. We are ready. We put together a plan. Tim has been collecting all the numbers from different departments. And we are in a position where we can apply. But in 2021, at any point throughout the fiscal year, we can apply. I would like more time to go by and let the dust settle on all the other potential funding sources.
Yeah. Okay. And then just, the budget message this year was pretty comprehensive. and you really did a great job. But really just highlighted all the issues that we have now to deal with, and I think we're addressing all of them. I think it's probably on the town side of things. It's there's just more visibility to the revenues and the expense issues, whereas on the school side everything is new. They may have to find a whole new way to teach. I just had a couple of questions, if I could, on your budget message, that if you could clarify for me. And
Sure.
there were two things really, and one was you said that at this point there's no planned layoffs, and you're talking about the school department, as a result of the budget, but it may change when the final reduction in state aid is known. Do you have a sense of what the state aid would have to be cut before we start talking about layoffs there?
Well, it's really unknown. I have heard numbers of up to 20% cut in UGA and Chapter 70. A 20% cut in Chapter 70 is $1 million. The unrestricted general government aid is probably $200,000. So that's 1.2 million we'd have to cover. That's a big hole.
Yep.
Hopefully we're not there, and we can't plug that hole with free cash, because we'll be out of free cash real quickly and we'll still have a hole. My hope is we're not there. I have heard numbers of 10% as well, and that would be $550,000 cut in Chapter 70. That is still a big hole to fill, and we've got to have a plan to come out of this. Because my history with the use of free cash, and the 10-year plan that we essentially utilized to get it out of our budget. And new growth will only last us maybe 1 year, and after that, we'd probably have to cut services and reduce staff across the board.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And when are you going to find that, or get some indication what that cut might be?
Anyone?
Yeah.
I would like it, but I was on the conference call this morning expecting to hear something, and I didn't hear anything. So people at the state level are quiet on this. I think that they're concerned about creating concern at the local government level. A 10% cut in Chapter 70 for us is $500,000, and that would hurt. A 10% cut in Fall River is $15 million, and that would crush them. And same with Worcester and the other larger communities in the state of Massachusetts. So that would be a tremendous burden to bear. And I'm sure the state wants to develop a coordinated approach to getting that information out versus, having it leak out and,
Right.
And I think they're really hoping for federal government relief on this situation, similar to ARA that happened 10 plus years ago.
Okay. And then just one relative, compared to that issue, relatively minor issue on your budget message when you talk about the additional 50,000 from the stabilization fund. You're talking about being making sure that we, I guess, don't consider it as a recurring. Do you consider that to be a recurring revenue, I guess is my question.
I do, only that, we've reached the goal and exceeded the Board of Selectmen's goal of
Right.
8% of operating revenues minus debt exclusion debt. And this is just it. The stabilization fund will continue to grow.
Yep.
The interest on that account will continue to grow greater than the $50,000 that we're taking off of that account. So that 50,000 will help us with our recurring revenues, but that stabilization fund will continue to grow and hopefully keep up with the select board's goal of 8% minus debt exclusion debt. So
Okay.
that's the idea behind that.
But we'll look at it as a recurring revenue every year, I assume then.
Yeah, assuming any major shift in the stabilization fund, whether the stock market crashes more than it already has, which hasn't terribly affected us, but the stabilization fund is invested in stable accounts, unlike OPEB, which is, for the long term. Stabilization fund is pretty secure, so mostly invested in short-term notes, bonds, etc.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Jim, thanks for the update, of course.
Sure.
The FinCom public hearings, those are, in fact, public hearings. And so how would the public know how to participate if they wanted to do that?
That information will go out from the cable department or communications department, and they will be informed of the policy. Right now, public hearings are taking place across the town. Planning board, Conservation Commission. We had a public hearing at the last meeting, a poll hearing, granted, not all that exciting, but hey, you got to start somewhere. So we have dipped our toe in the water, and certainly the planning board public hearing went smoothly. Same with conservation. So we are prepared, I think, for a public hearing at the FinCom level.
Yeah, my only thought is that for those meetings, the likely participants were kind of known ahead of time. Whereas this one, presumably is wide open to anybody in the town. So
sure. Yeah, no, listen, I welcome people to come in and watch the meeting on Zoom and participate. I've always been interested in public process. Yeah.
So just, as we know, there isn't typically a lot of participation when it's an in-person meeting. So not that I would expect a lot, but just want people to understand that they have that option.
Yeah.
I also wanted to comment on your budget message, and not so much for specific things that are in it, but as Jeff pointed out, it is a really comprehensive document. And for people that are just sort of interested in a narrative about how we spend our money, it's a good place to go, actually. So is that posted in a place, or will it be posted in a place where people can see and access that?
It'll be posted tomorrow morning on the Town of Sutton website, suttonma.org, probably under my section, town manager section. We just want to get the word out.
Yeah, it's a good read. It'll require a few minutes to read through it, but I encourage people to do that. So look for that. If I can just spend a minute on the CARES Act money.
Sure.
I think I'm being dense here, so forgive me, but we've been awarded $842,000, but you're still required to actually apply for that.
Yeah.
So does that mean the money's there, but you have to support your need for it?
Yeah, I mean, there are communities that contacted the state. I think DOR is kind of handling the process, Department of Revenue, and asked for all the money up front. And, we'll send back what we don't need. And it doesn't really work with the state government or anybody for that matter. So, we have to justify through the application process of what we want to buy and the purpose behind why we want to purchase it. Again, some of it is only reimbursed at 25%, and then you have to defend the case before MEMA and FEMA to make the case that this is a necessary purchase for the town. One of the necessary purchases we're feeling are disinfecting machines, the machines that go around and blow ionic stuff into the air and kind of disinfect offices. One for town hall, police station, fire department, council on aging, that everybody has these to disinfect their offices on a regular basis, rather than once a week or once every other week. But that is something that, we only get 25% from the CARES Act. We need to justify it as well before FEMA and MEMA. So.
And so obviously you can make multiple applications for this.
Yes, yeah. This is just the first application. We're gonna apply for a little over $100,000. But then, we have another 750,000 that we can apply for throughout 2021.
And then I'm thinking of like Cheryl's department, and I'm thinking that she's probably had an unusually high amount of expenses with all the things that she's been working on.
Yep.
And do you expect those reimbursements to come from this, or are there other funds, other sources for those?
Well, there are a number of sources for this, for that. We are working off of a state grant that was applied to Town of Charlton, applied for the state grant, and it's sort of a regional grant. Cheryl is the lead nurse on that particular grant, and so she can bill through that grant. She's also representing a number of other communities through the IMAs that she's entered into, and she's able to build those communities, and the communities have the CARES Act money that they can pay for her time
Sure.
doing processing the cases and so forth. So, but we are asking for some Board of Health, money through the CARES Act,
Okay.
for extra hours and extra nurses that went above and beyond to serve the town.
Okay, great. That's really all I have. So again, thank you for the update, Jim. And I think we can move on now to announcements, roundtable, correspondence, and business topics. So Jesse, we'll start with you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. First off, the food pantry list. It's relatively short, but it was posted last Friday. So I know in particular, St. Mark's is going to be collecting this week, as I'm sure the First Congregational Church is going to be collecting. So just so the people who are in the community are aware, they're looking for corned beef hash, coffee, applesauce, mandarin oranges, mustard, hand soap, and spray cleaner. Relatively short list, but that's what they had posted. Next up, I would like to extend a personal thanks, as well as a thanks from the DUD, to Pam and Christine for what they did in terms of putting together of the Memorial Day presentation. I've received a lot of emails and texts from people who tuned in, and they were really, really thankful that I think overall we did a pretty good job. Not only the DUD, but they were definitely surprised to see the chairman and the vice chair make a guest appearance, as well as Representative McKenna. So I think from beginning to end, it was very well done. It was very thoughtful. And again, just thanks to Christine and Pam for the effort that they put in, because I knew they were working on Memorial Day, making sure that it was ready to roll. So thank you. That's for sure.
Yeah.
The last thing I have, and again, I've been mulling this and I don't quite know how to express it, so I'm going to hold off till I got it right. But based on the economic numbers that Jim was sharing, it just kind of popped in my head. Jim, I don't know if you have this information at hand, if you're able to get this information, but do you have any idea how our residents are doing in terms of unemployment, or how our businesses are doing? The governor's guidelines, if you can call them that, seemingly are random, and they're always in flux and so forth. So I don't know at this point how many businesses in town are still classified as being non-essential, and how many are essential. And do you have any gauge in terms of where we stand town-wide in those areas?
Yeah, I don't. The only, there is no unemployment report for town. It's based upon a regional basis, and it's generally Worcester County that we are lumped into. Anecdotally, I have driven up and down 146, as I'm sure all of you have, and noticed, there is some business and restaurant at the Galaxy Plaza, Starbucks, Five Guys. They are operating. Tony's is operating. Brickstones, and I'm sure we all try to do takeout to support those institutions, but it's going to be a challenge for all of them, especially the restaurants that can only operate at 25% when they're open, and 6 people per table. It's going to be a struggle. And
Well, I know down near me, the Peking Garden has not been open, period. They shut their doors down because I think they had issues with getting imports of Chinese vegetables and ingredients.
yeah.
So, their doors have been closed. But besides the restaurants, I know we don't have a huge commercial base per se,
Yeah.
but are there any of the larger businesses that are struggling or?
No, I think Atlas Box, or whatever their name is today, they are still doing very well, and looking to acquire additional property. And here in the town of Sutton, they're interested in acquiring it, but they can't right now because we're not bringing any issues to town meeting that could create some controversy.
Right.
But they are operating. Prime Metals is operating. They're moving equipment in. They will be working out of there very shortly if they're not already. IBA is taking it slower, but they're still building out there. So construction's still happening in town. Those are the 2 major construction projects, and then Atlas Box are unified. So I don't know what else to tell you.
I just, you hear the news all the time about all the businesses that are on the brink. And my concern is again, as I mentioned, I know we don't have a big commercial base to begin with. And there's a lot of small businesses that we do have in town that kind of go under the radar. And I think obviously, in terms of our tax base, if we start losing them, like other communities are going to lose their small businesses, that's something that we'll have to deal with sooner than later. And the same side of residents, if we are in the same range as the number that they're throwing out at the state, what are we at, about approximately 20 to 25% unemployment in Massachusetts? I think if on the town side residents are seeing the same thing, then we might be in a heap of trouble. And I know Sutton's not unique in this, but again, I just didn't know if you had the ways or the means to start documenting this, because you and Tim do a great job, looking into that crystal ball. And if we can get at least a little glimmer of what's looming on the horizon, we might be able to be one step ahead, as John Hebert always said.
Yeah, I would just say anecdotally that I don't think we will suffer as bad as the overall Massachusetts economy, and a lot of that is due in part to our socioeconomic standing as a town. We are, basically a bedroom community for, bigger areas, Worcester, Providence, Boston, et cetera. And the people that can, afford a home in the town of Sutton are generally do better at times like this than people that live in Worcester that are living below the poverty level or at the poverty level. They're going to really struggle. But it's going to affect us all. Probably a little less here in Sutton, but and the other part is a good news scenario, and that's Prime Metals and IBA. They are still moving forward. They are going to locate here. That's 400 plus jobs, and that'll have a spin-off to the restaurants and so forth. So even during this difficult time, we're still looking forward to the construction of a couple of major facilities in the town.
Okay. I just was putting out there, just trying to get a feeler in terms of where we're at. But I think, at least I know I appreciate the words that you had to share, as hopefully those people tuning in can at least get a little comfort to know that, again, as you point out, we may be in tough times, but we might not necessarily go off the cliff to the same degree as other communities. So that's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you. Wendy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just two quick items. I wanted to echo Jesse's thanks to Pam and Christine. I was very, very impressed by the program they put together, and like Jesse, I've received a lot of feedback from the community, so their efforts have not gone unnoticed. I also just wanted to remind the public of the rolling rally for the seniors on Thursday morning. There is information posted online as to the route and some precautions that, you know, the police department and other departments in town have requested that people follow. So I would love to see people out there. I want to hear all the cowbells and everything else. Our seniors deserve that and more. So that's all I have. Thank you both.
Very good. Jonathan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now, I too would like to just thank Pam and Christine for Memorial Day, what they put together for that, but also for all the work that they've done in kind of so quickly incorporating all the technology and allowing us to, you know, be able to have these meetings and have them open to the public and have them recorded. And just amazing work. And I think, you know, everybody in town, all the employees have really done a great job in adapting and finding ways for us to do these things digitally. So I just want to kind of thank everybody for that. And the final thing too is I just want to kind of going back to what Jesse was saying, I want to encourage, you know, the residents to, you know, to go to these restaurants and to buy from them, and, you know, the ones that are open. We need to support, you know, need to support them this time more than ever. And I just, you know, it's a very tough time for a lot of people, and anything we can do to support our neighbors is super important. So that's all I have to say.
Well said.
Very good. Thank you. Jeff?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Three things I had. The first was, I'm glad Wendy mentioned the rolling rally for the seniors. That should be, it looks like the weather's going to cooperate, and it should be a good time, and they do deserve it because they did work hard. You know, I share the frustration that you know, that Jesse mentioned about the effect that this current situation has had on all the businesses and so forth, and it certainly required sacrifice on all of our parts that we didn't really see it coming, and I think it's going to take a continued discipline and patience to get through it. And my question, I guess, Jim, and I don't know if you have any more visibility than this, but you know, when I look at the website, and I think we had our first case in town like the last week in March. I think in mid-May, we were at like 27, and now we're at 50, which seems like that's accelerating. Do you have any sense of the cases that we're getting in town now?
No, I don't know that it's accelerating. I think, you know, the increased testing obviously has shown, you know, obviously some positive cases, but that number is sort of leveled off at 50. So my plan is to do a code red call tomorrow that will basically reinforce the rolling rally as we talked about, but also town meeting and the town election. It's just a different year, that these are not taking place at their normal time, so people might not be aware of what's happening. So we're going to do that, get that word out to the public, and you know, Pam and Christine will reinforce that through the social media side of things. But yeah, I don't know.
Okay. And the last thing was to not only to thank Pam and Christine, but you know, as I think back to our goals meeting over the summer, I think that was one of the things we talked about, was improving communication. And I think they've done a great job of that. And, you know, kudos to them for everything they've done, because I can see a real improvement in the communication from not only this board, but throughout the town and all, and that comes from their hard work. So thank you to them.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I wanted to add that as well. I think it was Pam's idea to put together a virtual program this year where we couldn't go out and do the normal things that we do. So, you know, Jesse, I think you particularly enjoyed your role in it, to be able to participate and read all those names. And that was a lot of reading, so thank you for that. But to Jonathan's point, I think that team in particular, we all know that in our in-person meetings, there was various people that might come and be there to film, but in this new Zoom world, the number of people that actually have the skill set to control these meetings is reduced. So Pam and Christina are doing it all now. So they've really stepped up, and as you said, Jonathan, I think everybody in town has done that, but we certainly appreciate that work that they've done. So that's all that I have.
Dave, do you want to mention the taping that meeting tomorrow, that cable show?
Yeah, sure. I think Jim and I tomorrow are going to film what I'm calling a PSA to talk about the changes to the election and to town meeting, and maybe just touch on some general topics with the town overall. So I don't even know what the planned schedule for that is to be out on the air, but I would assume pretty quickly after tomorrow's filming.
Yeah.
So again, that was the technology team putting that together. I appreciate that. So, all right. Anything else? Any other comments? Then I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
Mr.
So
Chairman,
moved.
if I may, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion and a second. Tonight I'm hungry. So, all in favor? Aye.
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 Thanks very much, everybody.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Have a
Thanks,
good
guys.
night.
See you soon.